Paddy Pimblett is delusional. Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys don't know, I make MMA content Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, sometimes more depending on the fight week. Post interviews, videos, discussion, predictions, all of that. So if you like it, please hit that subscribe button and continue to be watching. So I started this with a bold claim, and it's about Paddy Pimblett. For those of you casual viewers, or for those of you that don't really know much about MMA, I'm going to explain to you who is Paddy. Paddy Pimblett is an MMA fighter that started off in an organization called Cage Warriors. This is an MMA organization that is obviously a lot smaller than the UFC, but is connected to the UFC because it's on their streaming platform. Cage Warriors has had a lot of champions. For example, Conor McGregor was a double champion at Cage Warriors in the first place. Paddy was actually a former champion in the organization. In the UK, he had some buzz, nothing really in America, but he had that buzz because honestly, the kid was a fun kid. He was very grounded, had unique hair, wasn't afraid to be himself, had a humbling background, and honestly, the kid was funny. He had funny post-fight interviews, and it seemed like he wasn't really afraid to be himself. And he was a character of sorts, and that's kind of why people resonated with him. But about in the summer of 2021, Paddy gets signed by the UFC. Now, this signing was actually very anticipated because, like I said, he was already a star in the UK, and diehard MMA fans knew who he was. And Paddy made his UFC debut on September 4th in the Apex version of UFC London. And this was a card during COVID, so they couldn't really travel. Paddy in his debut actually started off really bad because Luigi, the guy that he was fighting against, rocked him early. It seemed like actually Luigi was going to knock out Paddy. But we all know what happened. Paddy weathers the storm and knocks out Luigi in the first round. The guy showed that he could take hits and that he could also give them as well. So finally, the UFC comes back to London on a phenomenal fight night. 2 times in a row, Paddy is fighting in the O2 behind all of his fans, gets that big pop, gets that big reaction. And I would say as of a week and a half ago, Paddy was a fan favorite. I remember when I made my prediction video at the time recording it, and when I criticized Paddy, I was a little nervous that people were actually going to come at me and be like, hey, like, why are you talking about Paddy like that? A lot of the UK fans. But of course I said my opinion anyway. Like I said, what happened in this week and a half? It seemed like if you were to talk to everybody a week even ago, it seemed like if you were to talk to everybody last Monday, Paddy would be a fan favorite. Paddy is one of the most extremely delusional and ignorant fighters on the roster right now. And I'm going to explain to you guys why. Ariel Helwani is an MMA reporter. He's worked for ESPN, Vox Networks, and the host of the MMA Hour. Ariel has been covering the sport since 2009, before it was really mainstream. He's kind of the OG of sorts, and he's also a reporter known to ask the hard questions, even if Dana doesn't like him. If you want me to make a separate video about how Ariel and the UFC did not get along, comment below and I'll make it. Ariel winds up not really going to the events anymore. He's hired by ESPN, and because of that, had a lot of back and forth with Dana internally. Like I said, I can make a whole separate video about the whole situation, but causing Ariel to want to leave ESPN and start the MMA Hour again to be independent. Now, Ariel Helwani actually had Paddy Pimblett on the program when he was on Cage Warrior. There's tons of tweets and videos that you could find of Ariel talking to Paddy before he was in the UFC, and before a lot of people even knew who he was. And when you ask Ariel why, he says, I believed in Paddy. I believed that he would be a good fighter in the future. He wanted to give Paddy a platform. So what happened? In the beginning of the week, Paddy Pimblett does a podcast with Dana White, and like I said, Dana doesn't like Ariel already. They both shit talk Ariel Helwani.
You know what I mean? Yep. I hate all these journalists, like Ariel Helwani in particular. Like, he loves earning money off fighters. Yep. Like, get your dough out, Ariel. You know what I mean? Start paying people for these interviews. What, you make thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on. Wanted, like, when I was in New York for the MSG card last year, he wanted me to do an interview with him, and I had a paid interview that day, and he wanted me to really let go of that paid interview to do an interview with him, BT Sport, what he's getting paid for. And he said, oh no, that's me journalist integrity. You're not a journalist no more.
Far from it.
You're a content creator, Ariel. You're not a journalist. And he went on his MMA Hour and talked about me and my manager.
You could see in that clip that Paddy is accusing Ariel of asking Paddy to skip his interview that he was getting paid for to go on Ariel's program for free. And before we start this, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on if fighters should pay for interviews. So I've done a few interviews with fighters by now, and none of them have paid me anything, which is supposed to be normal. But honestly, I'm glad that Ariel brought awareness to this, because newer people on the scene like me, I don't really even know what is the social norm. Is it normal to pay athletes, or is it not? I'm gonna tell you why I think it's important not to. At the end of the day, I'm not saying I have the biggest platform, but being in an interview, no matter how small, how big, you are basically choosing what you want that interview to be. Yes, I'm asking questions, but you could use that to tweet it out and be like, hey, this is an interview where I talk about X, Y, and Z, so your fans, or you can grow fans, can learn about you, learn about your thoughts on certain events. And that's kind of how I view the interview. I want it to be a kind of like resume or some sorts that fighter could use to say, hey, like, check check me out. And the truth is, you know, I would say the biggest interviews I've done would be people like Sadiq Yusuf, Aljamain Sterling. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting any other ones, but a lot of the people that I have are usually people that are in the prelims, not ranked, which is totally fine because like I said, I'm looking at interviews for people to kind of use as a resume to introduce themselves to more people, to tweet out and say, hey, if you want to know my thoughts on certain things that are going on, let me post this and show you here. And Ariel found the idea of paying Paddy incredibly insulting because, like I said, he's had him on the program before. Ariel is a big name too in the MMA world. He's not just a nobody. Things might not have gone exactly how Paddy said they did. You see, Ariel put out a video on his YouTube channel basically breaking down what really happened. Ariel shows that he has recorded proof that Paddy sent him a voice message asking Ariel first if he could do any content with Ariel and did not mention about getting paid.
Because what he just said right there is an absolute bold-faced lie. It's the next message, October 27, 2021. Paddy sends me a voice note. This is what the voice note said.
Yo, the big fella. What's going down, Ariel? Just thought I'd let you know, lad, if you wanted to say hi or do anything with a man, I'll be in NYC in November. I think I'm going to be there from the 3rd to the 6th, and then I'll be coming back again on the 17th or the 18th, and then be coming back to Liverpool on the 23rd. So I'm about in New York, 2 separate occasions, just in case you want to see your mate, you know what I'm saying?
That's Paddy Pimblett sending me a voice note saying, hey, I'm going to be in New York if you want to do anything. I didn't reach out to him. I didn't ask him. He's saying, if you want to say hello or do anything together. So we go to Graham, my old friend Graham Boyle. What are the days for the next trip, I ask? Maybe I can do something with him for BT Sport on the Friday if free. He referenced BT Sport. So now I get this message from Graham. Paddy has a lot of quote unquote, as he puts it, paid booking requests right now. If BT want to put a budget forward, we can look to get something scheduled. Otherwise, he's got to take the paid work available. You would think maybe I'm upset about this, right? Oh, this is a bad sign of things to come. No, happy for the guy because he's getting paid by Barstool. Happy for any fighter who gets paid. Happy for any fighter that's earning extra money because Lord knows they all deserve it and then some. Been around a long time, as you know. First time anyone has ever said this to me. Quite insulting, to be honest.
Paddy says, hey, talk to my manager. Ariel talks to his manager and says, I have a lot of paid bookings for Paddy, but if BT Sports, which is the organization he works for, BT Sports is willing to put up a budget, then we can talk. Ariel found this extremely insulting, basically responding with like, hey, a simple no would have been fine. I'm not paying for an interview. And to me, I kind of interpret this as Paddy losing who he was. Fans loved him because, like I said, he had a relatable personality. He was funny. He was young. He represented just being normal, being himself. But now it seems like he's kind of changing who he is because he's with Dana White. And because Dana White hates Ariel, he is shitting on Ariel despite everything that Ariel has done for him in terms of promoting him. And now that everybody found out that Paddy was lying, it's tough. And with all that negativity, Paddy had to go into fight week. There was drama between Ilya and Paddy. Lots of people think that Paddy is ducking Ilya. That's honestly a small part of the story. So let's break down Saturday night. The greatest MMA robbery. People are saying that this is one of the greatest MMA robberies. I'm gonna break down why. So at this point, I'm assuming everybody that's watching this video has watched the fight, but if not, let me break it down for you. The fight kind of consists of similarities to Paddy's first fight between Luigi, where he had his chin up in the air and kept getting rocked by Jared Gordon. And credit to Paddy, he has a phenomenal chin because he was getting beaten. And the first round was primarily Jared Gordon. I mean, Paddy withstood a lot of those hits, but Jared landed a takedown at the end of the round. Round 2, closer round. You know, this if you give it to Paddy, I don't necessarily blame you, but when I was scoring it live, I had Paddy down 2-0 at this point. And then we get to the third round, and Jared Gordon controls Paddy for 90% of the round, holds him against the fence, tries to get the takedown the whole round. Basically like Merab and Aldo. Jesus, I forgot that fight even happened. Like, that feels like a pipe dream. You would think at the end that Jared would get the win, 29-28, best for Paddy. But all 3 judges scored the contest 29-28 in favor of Paddy. 2 judges giving him rounds 1 and 2, and the last one giving him 2 and 3. Round number 3, a round where Jared controlled 90% of that round. And you would think, okay, look, of course we're not blaming Paddy for him getting robbed. Of course not. Paddy did what he had to do, he fought, and that's that. But you think that he would acknowledge that it was a tough fight? Well, you might be wrong.
That wasn't close. He just consoled me in the third. But no, what, Joe? Have you consulted me manager and see how much you're paying me for this interview?
You don't think it was a close fight at all?
Not at all. I won the first 2 rounds and then coasted in the third. I knew I was 2 rounds up, so I didn't want to do nothing dangerous and risk losing the fight. I knew for a fact I'd won the first 2 rounds pretty easily.
As you can see, Paddy doesn't even care. He says it's not a close fight. He clearly won. And this, in my opinion, is the final straw. When you look at people like Hamzat or Connor, you know, when you look at their hype train, the difference really was that they were performing. I mean, Hamzat had that tough fight with Gilbert Burns, but outside of that, he's done everything he's supposed to. And even the tough fight with Gilbert Burns, he showed his heart. He showed his skill. He showed that he could hang with the best of the best. And he won the fight. I think what a lot of people are upset about Paddy is claiming to be this guy. And when you look at the performance against Jared Gordon, I mean, imagine if it was someone like Dustin Poirier or even Justin Gaethje in there with him. Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor. These guys would rip his head off and even fuck the ranking. When you look at guys like Terrence McKinney, Drew Dober, these guys would have their way with Paddy. Especially when you look at how Paddy was being controlled by Jared so easily. Paddy has great jiu-jitsu, I will give him that, but his stand-up needs work. And look, I'm not just calling him delusional because of these things. What the third thing is scary. Paddy Pimblett will not change. Paddy had the same problem from his first UFC fight to his fourth, and there's been a 1.5 year difference or so. Paddy has acknowledged his errors and said, no, I'm gonna keep doing it anyway. He doesn't want to improve because he thinks that he is doing everything he can. Paddy is seriously delusional, and I worry about his matchups against people like Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, the top of the division. I mean, seriously, I would love to know the line between him and Dustin, and I also would want to know how fast that thing would end, because it would probably end within the first round. I mean, I would take a bet within a half round. Like, Dustin would annihilate him. I think stylistically, however, I would like to see Tony Ferguson versus Pat. I think that's the fight to make. And other than Tony, I mean, I don't think there's any winnable fights for him, and even Tony, I think, fucks him up. So what do I think the UFC should do with Pat? Well, I might have a few ideas. I think if you're Paddy, you look at what had happened this week, the fuck-ups you made, and you gotta accept yourself. People are not gonna like me. I think this is time for him to play into that villain role, to kind of embrace all the hate, this robbery. Keep saying that you think that this fight was easy. Keep making these bold claims like Jake Paul that piss people off, and get people to talk to you about it that way, because nobody's gonna talk to you about your fight ability, because truth is, you're not that great. Nobody's gonna talk about you because they like you, because the truth is that a lot of people got off that Paddy hype train this week. You gotta be the bad guy. And hell, I mean, his fighting style isn't really all that boring. I mean, like I said, he throws himself in there, his chin up, gets rocked. Kind of a problem when you say that Jared Gordon is really all he's at. If he can't be Jared Gordon, what makes you guys think that he's gonna be able to bait Terrence McKinney or Ilia Topuria? I mean, after you saw Ilia Topuria's performance, I mean, what in what universe do you think that would be competitive? So I think the UFC should take this opportunity and make Paddy build a lot of their fighters up. Put him against Terrence McKinney, get him that big name that the world will now know. But even not Terrence McKinney, maybe someone that's even less known. I mean, if Jared Gordon beat Paddy this weekend, which he kind of did, people would be looking forward to seeing him fight. I hope a lot of the UK fans don't get mad at me. I know he's your boy, but I'm saying this because this is just all constructive criticism. I hope whatever I say you guys can agree with. And on a side note, my final note, dear Paddy, if you're listening to this, change your manager. Look, and I don't know shit about his manager. I've actually DM'd him before, but I don't know him like that. Paddy, I'm gonna give you some advice if by any means you're watching. Get rid of your manager. Although I don't know anything about his character or how he does business behind the scenes, it's a serious problem to have a manager that is also in charge of a UFC show. Do you really think that that's not gonna interfere with your career at all? Now, for those of you that don't know, Paddy's manager is actually the president of Cage Warriors, which, like I said, is on UFC Fight Pass. And one would think that if his manager talks to Dana or wants to negotiate Paddy's pay at all, that might affect his revenue or affect some sort of something in Cage Warriors. It might affect how much funding his show gets. I don't mean to sound like an expert at all about this UFC Fight Pass and Cage Warrior stuff and how it acts behind the scenes. It could be a problem if you mess with the UFC brass, get into arguments with them about Paddy's pay without having your own self-interest in front of you talking about Cage Warrior. Any manager that's expecting you to get paid for interviews. I mean, let's be real, Paddy. When you look at Ariel's response, it actually did more views than your podcast with Dana White. It did more views with the clip of you talking. It did more than both of those things combined. So what makes you think that you should get Ariel to pay you for an interview when you're not even bringing the own views to your YouTube channel? He is delusional, and I don't hate this kid with a passion, but the facts are the facts. He is not going to get better if he stays this delusional, both business-wise and fighting-wise. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully the UK fans don't rip me apart, because I still love you. And Paddy, if you're watching this, which I doubt you will, I'm only saying this as constructive criticism, and I hope you just take it. You can call me a fucking fat sausage for all I care, just saying my thoughts. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.